Today's video, we're going to be looking a little bit at the evidence for evolution and different objections to evolution, kind of answering those questions that some people might have. I can't stress enough how important it is to understand evolution. Evolution is an extremely powerful theory that's been around for a very long time. It's had a huge impact on humanity. If we're going to be answering and asking questions about what is the purpose of life, where is humanity going, we need to understand evolution seriously. It's estimated that 250,000 eukaryotic species have been preserved in the fossil record out of a likely 30 billion that have existed in the past 600 million years. We're looking at like 0.00% of the entire spectrum of organisms. And out of that chunk, 95% of those fossils are from organisms that lived underwater, not on land. So we're going to be asking questions about the evolution, especially of humans, from apes or from not from apes. We're looking at such a small sample size. So small. I mean, it's ridiculous how small it is. And it's hard to make perfect inferences based off the evidence that we have. But that's what we're going to be attempting to do today. First, let's talk about the organization of the fossil record. The fossil record is so well organized, it's ridiculous. In every single country, almost every single country, we've done excavations, and we find that no organisms are misplaced. We never find an organism where it shouldn't be. Furthermore, we find more advanced organisms, more complex varieties above the simpler ones. A real testament to how accurate it is that paleontologists will actually predict what organisms will show up in what rock. So, for example, if they're looking for a fish with legs and wrists, they'll say, okay, it should be in this rock. And then we'll go find rock like that is exposed and find the exact organisms they're looking for. It truly is amazing. And Neil Shubin, in his book, Your Inner Fish, really brings that whole story to life. For more information on that book, make sure to check the link in the description. Next, I want to dive in the second point, which is the evolution of structures. We see a clear pattern. It's also important to consider what I mentioned earlier, that we're looking at such a small portion. We really have to ask ourselves a question. If we had 100% of the possible fossils accounting for every single organism that exists in the last 600 million years, would we still see those gaps? Would people still come out and say, hey, we're missing transitional fossils, we need missing links? No, I don't think anybody would come out and say that. It would be so meticulously organized and linear that no argument could be presented against it. Another thing that's really important to consider when talking about missing links is that a missing link, the correct term for it is a transitional species. And transitional species, by their definition, are rarer or are more rare. On the Origin of Species talks about this, and this is where I learned it from. It was an extremely, extremely good rebuttal to the idea of the missing link. So now we covered two kind of evidence-based things for evolution. I want to talk about a problem now. These are polystrate trees. I remember looking into these, and when I saw polystrata and polystrate trees, I was like, wow, that's tough for evolution to kind of deal with there. And for those of you who don't know, I'll put up a picture. It's trees that have fossilized and crossed multiple layers of strata, and these seem to kind of disprove a slow, gradual accumulation of layers of sediment, which in turn debunks kind of the theory of evolution. However, there are plenty of explanations for how these trees formed through millions of years. First, the geologists don't say the formation of strata over a rapid amount of time is impossible. It is possible. It's seen in many locations, especially areas that have a lot of flooding. So if somebody comes and says, scientists don't believe that layers can be formed very quickly, no, that's wrong. They just don't believe that's what occurred over the entire world. Furthermore, there are plenty of polystrate trees with fully developed root systems. In essence, this disproves the idea of one large flood. In fact, it would suggest that there are multiple floods in a certain area. So it makes sense. It's kind of confirming evidence that we have an area that has polystrate trees. It has layers of them, as you would expect in an area of many sediment-rich floods. Another thing is that trees can survive a partial burial. So if it's buried up to a certain height, it can still survive that, and it will grow and grow and grow, and then another layer of strata will kind of be formed. It'll make it look like it's polystrate. And again, this could form over hundreds of years. Another possible explanation for these polystrate trees is that once the fossil had formed, the tree fossil, it was then exposed, and a new layer of sediment would come and fill in that gap, making it look like it had grown through many layers of strata or was buried in many layers of strata, but in reality it was one, it was uncovered and then reburied. The final piece of evidence that kind of puts this whole thing together is that polystrate trees can actually be seen forming in many places all across the United States. One of them, I believe, is off the coast of California in a few different spots. You can actually swim and see these polystrate trees forming. Next, we're going to talk about two more kind of pieces of evidence for evolution. One of them is going to be horses and whales. Now, I'm not going to do an extensive video on horses and whales. There have been tons that have been done with these very good graphics that I probably cannot do. So I would suggest going and looking at those. They're only a few minutes, I do believe, and you can see the progression of either the horse or whale into what it is today with a very, very good transitional species lineup. The last piece of evidence I want to mention today is genetic similarity. We've been talking about kind of genetics recently, and one of the most important things is that genetics wasn't something that Darwin used, for example, to understand the connection between different organisms. But as we did learn more about genetics, it actually confirmed his theory, which is extremely, extremely powerful. I'll give an illustration of this. People oftentimes say, we share, but I'm not sure the exact numbers, but let's just say 90% of DNA with a monkey. And other people say, oh yeah, but we share 50% with a banana. Like, yeah, you're exactly right. That's the point. And furthermore, we have, through years of research prior to genetic evidence, constructed these massive family trees of what we thought organisms were related, or what organisms were related to which ones. And as genetic information becomes revealed, as genomes become sequenced, we start to see that it's confirming our original intuition that these organisms are in fact related to each other. We covered quite a bit of information in this video, but it was a necessary video. I think that understanding evolution really opens a door to a whole new conversation about what is the meaning of our lives. Is it to just reproduce? Is it to just be here and be alive? Where did consciousness come from? All these different things are really enabled by the theory of evolution. So if you're interested in those types of conversations, those kinds of discussions, make sure to subscribe here to Atlas. Also wanted to mention, if you're interested in any of the books I referenced today, they'll be down in the description below, and you can check those out.